All right, so I thought that I would review these answers with you verbally since we've been doing this silent lecture thing, and some of you might actually enjoy hearing me go over it a little bit. So I have a funny story to tell about this. Is when I was taking this class a long time ago, they did know about hypovolemic thirst, and our professor, the professor that I had, the way he started classes, we would always have to be very quiet when he walked in. Okay. And then he would start class and he would always say something like very controversial. And then that was our cue to kind of argue with him or go, "What?" And that's how he always started class. So on this day, he walks in and he says, "Class, I want to tell you something. So, if you were to get your leg blown off, then you would be very upset about this, of course, and in a lot of pain. But something that you've never considered is you are going to crave. No, you're going to want to drink the ocean." And then we're like, "What? Oh no. Da, 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 da." So I was always like a back row girl with my girls in the back. And then you had the front row people that hardly ever said anything, and the back row people would be. And so, anyway, this guy who never says anything, he's much older than the rest of us. He always sat in the front row right in front of the teacher, never said anything. So he turns around, stands up. He's much older than us. And he says, "Class, I know you like to mess around with the teacher, but for once I have something to say in support of the teacher to try to help you understand this." Is he pulls up his pants leg and he shows us that he has an artificial limb. And he says, "I did get my leg blown off in Vietnam." And we're like, "Oh my gosh, that's so terrible." And he goes, "But you know what was really interesting is I did really crave a salty drink." He goes, "I'm not sure if they had V8 done, but it was similar to wanting something like drinking some serious V8 juice. I had this overwhelming urges. I didn't care about anything else but salt." So then the professor says, "Thank you so much." He goes, "Mm-hmm." So anyway, this is kind of what the hypovolemic thirst. So we're doing number 2 first. It says hypovolemic thirst creates a desire for salt water. You want salty foods. And like, I don't think this version of the textbooks talks about this, but I know past ones they had a reference to it. Or maybe I'm getting confused with my sexuality class textbook. All the textbooks run together every now and then. But anyway, they talk about that some women experience the desire for salty foods right before they're having their period or during their period. And that's because you are losing some blood there. And so maybe that's why you're getting those salty cravings. So, anyway, hypovolemic thirst results from loss of blood or loss of extracellular fluids. It basically means like hypo means below. So you could remember hypovolemic thirst is low volume. See, hypo, below, low blood volume. So it comes from low blood volume. So you don't want to replace blood loss with more water because that would further dilute the blood. So you seem to need to replace just the water and the salt. So the hypovolemic thirst creates a desire for salt water. Hypovolemic thirst is detected by, okay, so this textbook doesn't really talk about baroreceptors in particular, but that's what we've always called them in the past. They just say heart receptors by the heart. And it's also detected by the kidneys. So if you think about it, the heart would say, "Oh, yes, I'm not pumping as much blood." And then the kidneys would also have the ability to say, "My job is to filter the blood and I'm not seeing as much blood. I think we got to give some messages up to the brain." But I would think the brain would definitely know too, because our brain always uses 20% of the blood. So the brain probably has its own mechanisms as well. Okay, but anyway, we're just going to talk about what we've got here. So anyway, hypovolemic thirst is detected by the heart receptors, baroreceptors on my slides, and the kidneys. And the kidneys don't have a direct line to the brain because they're an endocrine system gland. So what they do is they release a hormone. And they release this hormone called renin, and then renin turns into angiotensin 1, and then angiotensin 2, and then this will go up to the part of the brain that receives messages about hypovolemic thirst is, now this seems a little bit weird in your textbook, but it's the subfornical organ. But if you look in the text part, it's like kind of maybe hard to deduce. But check out that thing, the chart in there. So it's a subfornical organ. Okay, so the part of the brain that receives messages about hypovolemic thirst is called the subfornical organ. Ooh, let's look at this again. Hypo means below. Hypovolemic is low blood volume thirst. And then sub is also below. So low, low, low. And then osmotic thirst is O, O, O. Osmotic thirst is from osmotic pressure, and it's detected by the OVLT and the subcortical organ, but OOO, low, low, low. Okay, once this part of the brain is activated, it sends messages just like osmotic thirst. See the details from the last section, but it also activates a type of salt hunger. So it sends messages to those daggone lateral preoptic nucleus, says, go find water. And it sends messages to the supraoptic and paraventricular nucleus, and they send a message onto the posterior pituitary gland, hey, release some vasopressin. The vasopressin goes down to the kidneys and it says, retain water. But then the kidneys also get the message to retain salt. So salt levels are detected by the adrenal glands, which respond by releasing aldosterone, which causes the kidneys, salivary glands, and sweat glands to retain salt, and also goes to the brain and signals areas in the nucleus solitarius. Nice new word. And other areas of the brain to increase salt intake and have a preference for salty taste. Very cool. Hopefully you guys understand it. On to hunger.